There are moments in life when you realize the person you thought you knew, the one you built a life with, is a complete stranger. For me, that moment arrived at 6:40 a.m., in the sterile, too-bright light of an international airport, watching my husband's face as a K-9 unit approached our luggage. It wasn't a grand, dramatic reveal. It was a subtle tightening around his eyes, a barely perceptible tremor in his hand, a flicker of cruel anticipation that only someone who had spent 2 decades studying his tells would ever notice. He thought he was about to watch my world shatter. He thought airport security was about to pull a locked metal case from my black leather carry-on, expose me to public humiliation, and clear the path for his carefully constructed new life with his mistress. What he didn't know was that I had already rewritten the script. By the time that German Shepherd reached the conveyor belt, the locked case was no longer in my bag. It was in hers. My husband, Arthur, was a man who wore success like a tailored suit. At 52, he had the kind of distinguished gray at his temples that made him look trustworthy, the easy confidence that charmed strangers in elevators and, once upon a time, charmed me into believing he was the man I would spend my life with. We were standing in the premium security line at O'Hare, the air thick with the smell of expensive coffee and the unspoken anxieties of travel. He kept glancing at my new, sleek black leather carry-on, the one he'd insisted I buy for our reconciliation trip to London. "Relax, Clara," he'd said, his voice a smooth balm. "We're ahead of schedule." His hand rested lightly on the small of my back, a gesture that once meant affection, now felt like a subtle push toward my own undoing. Beside us, a woman in a cream cashmere coat and perfectly styled blonde hair was placing her designer weekender onto the belt. Her name was Serena Vance. Arthur had introduced her to me 6 months ago as his new marketing director at Halcyon Technologies. She'd shaken my hand with an almost too eager enthusiasm, her eyes darting to Arthur's before returning to mine. 3 months later, I started noticing the late-night texts, the new Cartier bracelet on her wrist, the way her gaze lingered on him a little too long. And now, here she was, on the same flight, to the same destination, for the same romantic getaway Arthur had booked to save our marriage. He'd spun a convoluted tale about Serena needing to deliver urgent, confidential documents to a European client during our layover, as if encrypted email didn't exist, as if a multi-billion-dollar tech company relied on his mistress hand-carrying paper across the Atlantic like it was 1985. I had smiled and nodded, pretending to believe him. I had not believed him. I had calculated. The line moved forward, a slow, inexorable march toward the X-ray machines. Arthur guided me a half step, his hand still on my back, a silent insistence that my bag go first. He wanted it isolated, clearly mine, when the alarm inevitably sounded. I placed my carry-on onto the belt, then stepped through the body scanner, my arms raised, my heart a steady drum against my ribs. No alarm. The machine remained silent. On the other side, I picked up my shoes and coat, watching as my suitcase rolled out of the X-ray tunnel. The TSA officer glanced at the monitor, then at my bag, and waved it through without a second look. I reached for the handle and pulled it off the rollers. Beside me, Arthur went utterly still. It was a subtle shift, but I felt it. The instant confusion, the flash of disbelief, the way the blood seemed to drain from his face before he forced it back under control. He stared at my bag as if it had betrayed him. The K-9 unit, a sleek German Shepherd with focused eyes, was now working its way down our lane, sniffing at bags and briefcases. Arthur's eyes followed it, then darted to Serena's cream-colored weekender, which was now moving toward the X-ray. His carefully constructed composure was cracking, revealing the raw fear beneath. Last night, around 2 a.m., I had watched him from the shadows of our bedroom. He'd slipped out of bed, a silent phantom, and knelt by my suitcase. My breathing had been even, my eyes barely open beneath lowered lashes, as he unzipped the inner lining, cut a precise slit in the fabric, and slid a small, locked metal case into the frame. He'd smoothed the lining back, zipped it up, and patted the suitcase with the air of a man sealing a deal. Then he'd returned to bed and slept soundly. What he didn't know was that I had gotten up 20 minutes later, removed the case, opened it in my home office, and learned exactly what kind of husband I had truly married. The memory was a cold, sharp blade, cutting through the airport's manufactured calm. Arthur turned to me, his voice strained, a desperate attempt at normalcy. "Clara, are you all right? You look a little pale." I met his gaze, my smile serene. Perfectly fine, Arthur. Just a long night. The dog was closer now, its nose working intently, moving with a controlled purpose. Arthur's eyes were fixed on Serena's bag, a silent prayer forming on his lips. Then, the canine handler gave a sharp command. The dog lunged, not at Arthur's garment bag, which was now behind Serena's, not at the random roller bag next to it. It lunged directly at Serena's cream leather weekender, its barks echoing through the terminal. The scene erupted into controlled chaos. TSA agents moved swiftly, isolating Serena and her bag. Arthur stood frozen, his face a mask of utter horror. Serena, initially confused, then panicked, began to stammer protests. What? What is it? I don't understand. Her eyes, wide and terrified, darted to Arthur, begging for an explanation, for reassurance. He couldn't give it. He could only stare at the unfolding disaster, his carefully laid trap now sprung on the wrong prey. A customs officer approached me, his expression calm but firm. Ma'am, did you witness this individual place anything in this bag? I looked at Serena, then at Arthur, then back at the officer. No, officer. But I did see my husband, Arthur Thorne, place a similar item in my suitcase last night. I removed it, and I believe he intended for it to be found in my luggage. The officer's gaze sharpened, shifting from Serena to Arthur, who was now being questioned by another agent. And why would he do that, ma'am? I took a deep breath, the adrenaline starting to hum through my veins. Because he's been embezzling millions from his company, Halcyon Technologies, for months, with Ms. Vance's help. This trip was his attempt to frame me for carrying contraband, to discredit me, and to make me disappear while he escaped with the money and his new life. The words, spoken aloud, felt like a release. The officer nodded slowly, then turned to his colleague. We have a new lead here. Get Mr. Thorne isolated. Serena was openly sobbing now, mascara streaking down her face. Arthur, please, tell them I didn't know. You said it was just a package for a client. Arthur, cornered, tried to regain control. He demanded his lawyer, then tried to claim I was having a mental health episode. Neither landed. Men like Arthur, who spend their lives managing private rooms, often forget that institutions are far harder to charm than wives. As they led him away, he turned, his eyes locking with mine. I had expected fury, perhaps hatred, maybe even a threat. What I saw instead was a disbelief so profound it almost made him look young. Not innocent, never that, but young in the way powerful men sometimes do when the world stops agreeing to their version of it. He truly hadn't thought I would fight back, not like this. Serena was taken in another direction, still crying, her designer weekender now a piece of evidence. I didn't follow either of them with my eyes. I just stood there in the bright airport light, breathing in the scent of coffee, disinfectant, and the faint electrical hum of the scanner belts, letting the adrenaline drain out of me in slow, careful waves. A kind TSA agent, a woman with tired but sympathetic eyes, offered me a paper cup of water. You okay, ma'am? She asked gently. I took the cup, my hand trembling slightly. I will be. That was quite a morning. She nodded. Yes, it really was. I looked past her, out at the huge airport windows, where the first clean band of sunrise had started to break over the tarmac, turning the glass pale gold. Planes taxied in the distance. People hurried past us, dragging roller bags and half-finished coffees, utterly unaware that my marriage had just ended 20 feet from the C concourse scanner. And maybe that was the strangest part of all. The world didn't pause because your life cracked open. It kept boarding flights, steaming milk, and calling Zone 3 to the gate. It kept moving, which meant you could move, too. Arthur had spent months trying to make me doubt my mind, my instincts, my own name inside my own life. He wanted me frightened, discredited, erased. Instead, he gave me the clearest view I'd ever had of him and of myself. I was not the woman he had been talking to in that kitchen all winter, the one he thought he could manipulate. I was not tired, I was not confused, and I was certainly not done. I canceled the London flight. I called my daughter before the news could reach her some other way. Then I walked out of O'Hare into the cold Chicago morning, my suitcase in one hand, my coat buttoned high against the wind, feeling lighter than I had in years. This story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to real people, events, or places is purely coincidental.